My sons missed my surgery for a baseball game, so I donated the inheritance to the nurse. The morning light filters through my kitchen window in Boston, casting long shadows across the breakfast table where I sit alone. At 73, my days have settled into a quiet rhythm that echoes through this old Victorian house on Beacon Hill. The grandfather clock in the hallway marks each passing hour with its steady tick-tock, a sound that has become both comforting and haunting. This house holds 45 years of memories. Christmas mornings with two little boys racing down the stairs, birthday parties in the backyard, and countless family dinners around the mahogany table that now serves as my solitary dining companion. I reach for my phone, checking for messages that never come. The screen remains stubbornly blank. No notifications from Michael or James, my two sons who live barely an hour away in different suburbs of the city. They're both successful now. Michael runs his own law firm, and James teaches at MIT. I should be proud, and I am, but that pride is tinged with a loneliness that grows deeper with each passing day. The silence in this house isn't just the absence of sound. It's the absence of connection, the ghost of relationships that once defined my entire existence. Before we continue with this story, I want to ask you something. Please comment below and let me know where you're watching this video from. Your stories matter to us, and we're here because we genuinely want to help families going through these difficult situations. If this resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, because we're committed to providing real support and understanding for people facing family challenges. Now, let's get back to Eleanor's story. My neighbor, Patricia Martinez, often stops by with fresh coffee and homemade pastries from her family's bakery. She's become my closest friend, a 65-year-old retired nurse whose warmth fills the empty spaces in my daily routine. Eleanor, you need to get out more, she tells me gently as we sit in my living room, surrounded by photographs of my sons at various stages of their lives. The pictures tell the story of my sacrifice. Michael in his Little League uniform, James at his high school graduation, both of them at their weddings where I smiled through tears of joy and quiet heartbreak. Patricia knows my story better than anyone. She knows about the years I worked double shifts as a secretary at Boston General Hospital to pay for their private school tuition. She knows about the master's degree in education I never pursued because the money went toward Michael's law school instead. She knows about the small inheritance from my mother that disappeared into James's graduate studies. You gave them everything, Patricia often reminds me, not with judgment but with the understanding of someone who has witnessed sacrifice transform into neglect. The irony isn't lost on me. I spent 30 years working at a hospital, watching families come together during medical crises, seeing the power of love and support in healing. Yet here I am, having given my life to raising two boys who have grown into men too busy for their mother's phone calls. They visit twice a year, Christmas and my birthday, arriving with expensive gifts that feel more like obligations than expressions of love. During these brief visits, they glance at their phones constantly, take work calls during dinner, and seem genuinely relieved when it's time to leave. The chest pains started on a Tuesday morning in February. Boston was buried under 2 feet of snow, and the city moved with the sluggish pace of winter. I was climbing the stairs to change the sheets on my bed when a sharp, burning sensation spread across my chest like wildfire. My left arm went numb, and suddenly I couldn't catch my breath. The pain was unlike anything I'd experienced, a crushing weight that made me stumble and grab the banister for support. I knew immediately what was happening. 27 years of working in a hospital had taught me to recognize the signs of a heart attack. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone, my mind racing through my options. Who could I call? My sons were both in meetings, probably, their phones silenced as they attended to clients and students. I tried Michael first, praying he would answer, but the call went straight to voicemail. His confident voice, recorded months ago, seemed to mock my desperation. "You've reached Michael Sullivan, attorney at law. Please leave a detailed message." James's phone rang 6 times before joining his brother in voicemail purgatory. The recording was more casual. "Hey, this is James. I'm probably in class or buried in research. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." The casual tone, so normal in everyday circumstances, felt crushing in this moment of medical emergency. I tried to speak, to leave some desperate plea for help, but the words came out as gasps and whimpers. The pain was intensifying, and I could feel my heartbeat becoming irregular, like a drum with a broken skin. Panic set in as I realized I might die alone in this house, surrounded by pictures of children who wouldn't know I was gone until it was too late. My vision started to blur at the edges, and I felt myself sliding down the wall onto the cold hardwood floor. In that moment of terror, I thought of Patricia. My fingers, clumsy with pain and fear, managed to find her number. She answered on the first ring. "Eleanor? What's wrong?" Her voice, trained by decades of nursing, immediately shifted into professional mode. I could barely speak, but I managed to whisper, "Heart attack. Can't breathe." I heard her sharp intake of breath, then the calm, authoritative tone I remembered from her hospital days. "I'm calling 911 right now, and I'm coming over. Stay on the line with me, honey. Don't hang up." The next hour passed in a blur of sirens, paramedics, and Patricia's steady hand holding mine as they loaded me into the ambulance. She rode with me to Mass General, the same hospital where I had worked for nearly 3 decades. As they wheeled me through the emergency room doors, I caught glimpses of familiar faces, nurses and orderlies who remembered me, who stopped their work to offer words of encouragement. Patricia stayed by my side through the chaos of admission, providing my medical history when I couldn't speak, calling my insurance company, handling the bureaucracy of emergency medicine with the expertise of someone who had navigated these waters professionally. The surgery lasted 4 hours. They had to perform a triple bypass, replacing blocked arteries that had been slowly choking the life out of my heart. Patricia later told me she spent those 4 hours in the waiting room, calling Michael and James repeatedly, leaving increasingly urgent messages. She contacted their offices, their wives, anyone who might be able to reach them. The messages she left painted a clear picture of the emergency. "Your mother is having open-heart surgery. She needs you here. This is serious." I woke up in the cardiac ICU connected to a web of tubes and monitors, my chest stitched and bandaged, my throat raw from the breathing tube. The first face I saw was Patricia's, her eyes red with exhaustion but filled with relief. She had been there for 6 hours, watching over me like the mother I had tried to be for my own sons. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly, her nurse's instincts kicking in as she checked the monitors and adjusted my blanket. "Have they called?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer from the expression on her face. She shook her head gently. "I've left 12 messages between them," she said. I explained everything, the surgery, the hospital, your room number. I even called their offices and spoke to their assistants. The silence that followed said everything. In my moment of greatest need, when my life hung in the balance, my sons were nowhere to be found. The first response came 24 hours later, not as a phone call or a hospital visit, but as a text message to Patricia's phone. Michael had finally responded, "Just saw your messages. Sorry, Mom is in the hospital. We're in Chicago for James's conference presentation and a big client meeting for me. Flights are expensive right now and we're committed here. Tell Mom we're thinking of her and we'll call when we get back next week." Reading those words felt like another heart attack. Flights are expensive. We're committed here. The casual dismissal of my medical emergency, reduced to a scheduling inconvenience, hit me harder than any physical pain I had endured. James's response came an hour later, with similar excuses wrapped in academic language about research obligations and conference commitments. Neither message contained an apology or even a question about my condition. Patricia's anger was visible, but she contained it for my sake. "They don't deserve you," she said quietly, adjusting the flowers she had brought from her garden. "You raised them better than this." But as I lay there in that hospital bed, surrounded by the steady beep of heart monitors and the gentle hum of medical equipment, I began to realize that perhaps I hadn't raised them better. Perhaps I had raised them to expect everything and give nothing, to see my love as an endless resource they could tap without reciprocation. The memories came flooding back as I recovered. I remembered Michael at 8 years old, standing in my bedroom doorway with tears streaming down his face because he had broken my grandmother's china vase playing baseball in the house. Instead of punishing him, I had held him close and told him that things could be replaced but little boys couldn't. I remembered James at 16, calling me at work in a panic because he had wrecked the car I had saved 2 years to buy him. Without hesitation, I had left work to pick him up, never mentioning the overtime shifts I would need to work to pay for repairs. Those memories, once cherished examples of unconditional motherly love, now felt like evidence of a pattern I had been too blind to see. I had taught them that their needs always came first, that their mother's sacrifice was as natural as breathing. I had modeled a love so selfless that it had made them selfish, so unconditional that it had taught them conditions didn't matter. During my 10-day hospital stay, Patricia became my primary caretaker and advocate. She coordinated with my doctors, managed my medications, and even brought me clean clothes and books from home. She navigated the insurance paperwork, scheduled follow-up appointments, and researched cardiac rehabilitation programs. She did everything that sons should do for their mother, and she did it with a grace and competence that highlighted their absence even more sharply. On my 7th day in the hospital, a young nurse named Jennifer stopped by my room. She was probably 30, with kind eyes and a gentle manner that reminded me of Patricia at that age. "Mrs. Sullivan," she said, "I just wanted to tell you how lucky you are to have such a devoted daughter. Your friend Patricia has been amazing. She's here every day, asking all the right questions, making sure you get the best care." I didn't correct her assumption that Patricia was my daughter. In every way that mattered, she had acted more like family than my actual family. The observation stayed with me as I planned my return home. Who would help me during recovery? Who would drive me to appointments, monitor my medications, assist me during the vulnerable weeks ahead? The answer was obvious, and it wasn't my sons. My discharge day arrived with typical Boston spring weather, gray skies and a persistent drizzle that matched my mood. Patricia picked me up in her reliable Honda Civic, the same car she had driven for 8 years because, as she always said, "It runs perfectly well, why change it?" The contrast with my son's expensive vehicles, purchased with money I had helped provide through years of sacrifice, wasn't lost on me. As we drove through the familiar streets of Boston, past the public garden where I had taken the boys to feed ducks, past the brownstones of Back Bay where they had attended private school, I felt a strange sense of disconnection from my own life. This city held decades of memories, but they felt like someone else's experiences now. The woman who had made those memories, who had sacrificed everything for her children's success, felt like a stranger to me. "Patricia," I said as we pulled into my driveway, "I need to ask you something important." She turned off the engine and looked at me with the patient attention I had come to treasure. "You've done more for me in the past 2 weeks than my sons have done in 2 years. You saved my life not just by calling the ambulance, but by being there through everything. I want you to know that I see it, and I'm grateful." She smiled, but I could see tears forming in her eyes. "Eleanor, you don't need to thank me. This is what people do for each other. This is what family does." The word family hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning. She was right, this was what family did. And she had proven herself to be more family than the children I had raised. The next morning, alone in my house for the first time since the heart attack, I made a decision that would change everything. I called my lawyer, William Chun, a man who had handled my affairs for 15 years. "William," I said, "I need to update my will. Significantly." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Eleanor, you just had major surgery. Are you sure this is the right time for big decisions?" "It's exactly the right time," I replied. "I've had a revelation about what family really means, and I want my estate to reflect that reality." I explained my situation carefully. The heart attack, my son's absence, Patricia's incredible care and support. William listened without judgment, asking practical questions about my intentions and the legal implications of my plan changes. "I want to leave the house and the majority of my assets to Patricia Martinez," I told him. "She's the one who's been here for me. She's the one who acts like family." William warned me about potential legal challenges from my sons, about the importance of demonstrating mental competency, about the possibility of family conflict. But my mind was made up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The process took 3 weeks. William arranged for independent medical evaluation to confirm my mental competency, documented Patricia's role in my care, and carefully structured the will to minimize potential legal challenges. I also decided to leave smaller amounts to various charities, the hospital where I had worked, a scholarship fund for nursing students, and the local food bank where Patricia volunteered. During those 3 weeks, I received exactly 2 phone calls from my sons. Michael called on a Sunday evening, his voice carrying the perfunctory tone of obligation. "Mom, how are you feeling? Sorry we couldn't make it to the hospital. You know how crazy things get." He talked for exactly 7 minutes about his work, mentioned that his kids were busy with school activities, and promised to visit soon. James's call came 4 days later, equally brief, equally hollow. Neither asked about my recovery process, my medications, or whether I needed help with anything. Neither mentioned Patricia or acknowledged the messages she had left explaining my condition. They had returned to their normal lives as if my heart attack had been a minor inconvenience rather than a life-threatening emergency. The day I signed the new will, Patricia sat in William's office with me, still unaware of the contents. "Eleanor, what is this about?" she asked gently. "You're scaring me with all this legal talk." I took her hand and looked into her eyes that had watched over me in the hospital, that had filled with tears when I was in pain, that had shown me what true care looked like. "Patricia, you saved my life. Not just medically, but in every way that matters. You showed me what family really means." I explained my decision, watching her face cycle through shock, protest, and finally, understanding. "I can't accept this," she said immediately. "The house is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Your sons." "My sons chose their priorities," I interrupted gently. "And you chose yours. You chose to be here. You chose to care. You chose to love without condition or expectation. That's worth more than money. But money is what I have to give." The confrontation with Michael and James came 2 months later, when the will became public record during routine legal filings. Michael called first, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Mom, what the hell is going on? I just heard from someone at the courthouse that you changed your will. Is this some kind of joke?" "It's not a joke, Michael. It's a decision based on who showed up when I needed them most." He sputtered through excuses, work obligations, travel schedules, family commitments. "I had important client meetings, Mom. James had his conference. We couldn't just drop everything." "Patricia dropped everything," I replied calmly. "She dropped everything to save your mother's life. She earned what I'm giving her." The conversation escalated from there, with Michael threatening to contest the will, questioning my mental state, and finally hanging up when I refused to change my decision. James's approach was different, more emotional manipulation than legal threats. "Mom, you're breaking my heart. After everything we've been through together, after all the love we've shared, how can you do this to your own sons?" His words might have worked once, but I had learned to see manipulation for what it was. "James, where was that love when I was having open-heart surgery? Where was it during the 10 days I spent in the hospital? Where has it been during the 3 months of recovery?" He had no answer, just more excuses and promises to do better in the future. Today, 6 months after my heart attack, I sit in my kitchen with Patricia as she prepares lunch for both of us. She moved in 3 months ago, initially to help with my recovery, but we've discovered that we enjoy each other's company immensely. The house feels alive again, filled with conversation and laughter and the daily rhythms of shared life. Patricia has transformed the garden, bringing her expertise with flowers and vegetables to create something beautiful and productive. She's also brought her nursing skills to volunteer work at the local senior center, and I've joined her there, helping with administrative tasks and discovering a purpose I didn't know I was missing. My sons have largely disappeared from my life, their occasional phone calls brief and strained. They've consulted lawyers about contesting the will, but William assures me that the documentation of their absence during my medical crisis, combined with the evidence of Patricia's care, makes their case extremely weak. More importantly, I've realized that their approval and presence, which I craved for so long, are no longer necessary for my happiness. The most surprising discovery has been friendship in my 70s. Patricia and I have become true companions, sharing books and movies, cooking elaborate meals together, and talking for hours about everything and nothing. She's helped me understand that love shouldn't be a one-way river flowing endlessly from mother to child, but a reciprocal exchange between people who choose to care for each other. Last week, We attended a graduation ceremony at the nursing school where Patricia volunteers as a mentor. Watching those young women and men receive their degrees, knowing they would go on to care for people in their most vulnerable moments, I felt a deep satisfaction. The money I had planned to leave my sons would have been spent on larger houses and fancier cars. The money I'm now leaving to nursing education will help train people who understand that showing up matters, that being present during someone's crisis is sacred work. I think about the woman I was before the heart attack, so desperate for my son's attention, so willing to accept crumbs of affection, so invested in their success that I forgot to invest in my own happiness. That woman feels like a stranger to me now. She wasn't wrong to love her children, but she was wrong to accept so little love in return. My chest bears a scar from the surgery, a thin line that runs from my collarbone to just above my heart. I trace it sometimes when I'm getting dressed, remembering the day it saved my life by forcing me to see clearly. The scar reminds me that sometimes we have to break open to let the light in, that sometimes the most painful experiences become doorways to freedom. Patricia and I are planning a trip to Ireland next spring, something I never would have considered when I was waiting for my sons to have time for me. We're learning Italian together through online classes, laughing at our pronunciation mistakes and dreaming of visiting Tuscany. I'm discovering that life after 70 can be full of adventure and new experiences, that it's never too late to choose yourself. The grandfather clock still marks time in my hallway, but its rhythm no longer sounds like loneliness. Now it sounds like possibility, like the steady beat of a heart that learned to value itself. Each tick reminds me that time is precious, and each talk reminds me that I'm finally spending mine on people who truly appreciate it. My legacy won't be the ungrateful children I raised, but the grateful woman I became when I stopped trying to earn love from people who had never learned to give it freely. Patricia will inherit my house, but I've inherited something far more valuable. The knowledge that family is chosen, that love should be mutual, and that it's never too late to rewrite your story with characters who deserve a place in it.